Good afternoon to everyone. It's nice to be here. It's nice to see everybody. On this very special day, brethren, and believe me, it is very special. The more I read about it, the more I read scriptures, revelations, and other parts of the scriptures, it becomes very clear to me that we're heading in the right direction on this earth for the return of our Messiah. Okay, now, what I'd like everyone to do is to open their Bibles to Revelations chapter 8. I'm going to read to you two separate verses out of chapter 8. I'm going to start with verse 2. And it states, Revelation 8 and verse 2, it says, "And I saw the seven angels who stand before our Creator Father in heaven, and to them were given seven trumpets." Okay, get down to verse 6. "Then the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared to sound them." Well, brethren, we're here and observing the Feast of Trumpets. And believe me, that is an event in the future that's going to get everyone on this earth at that time period in the future their attention. Everybody's going to sit up and take notice to it. And there are some people, brethren, who claim to have seen angel beings in times past. Okay. So my question is, who are these beings, these spirit beings, angels, as we call them, as the scriptures refer to them? What are their powers, and what do they do, and why did our Father in heaven create them? And that's my topic today. Angel beings, what are they? In any event, brethren, the creation of angel beings preceded, a long time before, the creation of the material universe. I think in my mind, in studying about this subject, our Father in heaven wanted family. He wanted beings around him, and he created these angel beings for a purpose. I read a book one time by Ronald L. Dart, and it was called The Lonely God. And when I got done reading that, I thought, that's why the angels were created. He wanted family, he wanted these beings around, and he gave them power, a free will, and actually an eternal life if they did and followed his rules and laws, because angel beings do have a free will. So, with that, let's look at Job chapter 38, the book of Job. Let's go there briefly in chapter 38. I'm going to read to you verse 5 to 7, actually 4 to 7. Now, Job is being talked to and has a conversation going on here, and he's being asked questions. He says, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set, and who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together, and all the angels shouted for joy." There they are, beginnings of creation. Angel beings, they were there. Okay. Now, in the beginning, brethren, angels were created perfect, as Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden. And they had, as I said earlier, they had the freedom of choice, as Adam and Eve did. They could choose between right and wrong, the same as we can. Now, these angel beings, brethren, they are spirit beings, but they also have a body. That may sound a little odd, but they do. Let's look at Hebrews 1 in verse 7. Let's look at the chapter in Hebrews, chapter 1, verse 7. I read this to you, verse 7. In speaking of the angels, he says he makes his angels winds and his servants flames of fire. You see, these angelic beings, brethren, can change and be transferred from one dimension to another at will. They have that power to do that, and you'll see as I go on here. Now, there are times when these angels appear, so to speak, in the material world, and they have been in scriptures called men. They can appear as men, and they have appeared as men. They can behave just like men, but only, and I have to emphasize this, only in a good way. They do, in a good way. They observe and know the commands of our Creator. They are part of His Spirit, although they are separate, but they understand our Father in heaven, and they go right along with His rules. They don't go beyond, nor do they make their own rules. Let's get that straight, too. You can imagine what that would be like if they could make their own rules and do what they want, but they don't. Understand they still have a free will, and they still follow the laws of living given by our Creator in heaven. Now, the interesting thing is, these angel beings can manifest themselves as men, and the scriptures bear testimony to them being able to show up at your doorstep, my doorstep, or anyone's. They have in times past. That's an interesting, very interesting scriptural statement. It's in Hebrews 13. Let's look at that for a moment. Hebrews chapter 13. I'm going to read to you verse 2. I'm going to start actually in verse 1. Keep on loving each other as brothers. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. That's an interesting thing. Who knows? Somebody comes to your door someday, knocks on the door. You're not sure who they are, and maybe they need help, or maybe they're asking for your help. And you may have helped out an angel being, see? And that's an interesting thing. But I'll say this right from the start. If that should ever happen to any one of us, in our minds and hearts, we will know that person is safe and that he is a special person. We will know it in our minds, because our Father in heaven doesn't play games with us. He doesn't play mind games like we humans do with each other a lot of times. But he's straightforward and honest and right to the point. And this person comes to your door, knocks on the door, and you'll know in your mind and heart that he is safe to be brought into your house. Now, it's interesting to note, the angels have a body, as I said earlier. But that body of theirs, brethren, complies with a different set of laws from the us human beings on this earth. Let's read 1 Corinthians 15 on that. 1 Corinthians 15. I'm going to read to you verse 39 to 40. 1 Corinthians 15. Paul says here, he says, all flesh is not the same. Men have one kind of flesh, animals have another, birds another, and fish another. There are also heavenly bodies, and there are earthly bodies, but the splendor of the heavenly bodies is one kind, and the splendor of the earthly bodies is another. And I think they're referring to angel beings, the heavenly host. Interesting there. So they have a spirit body, but they can be manifested as a man, which they have done in times past. And they do have a form. They can be manifested in flesh and bones. Spirit body can. Now, the question comes up, brethren, what do angels do? What is their purpose, and what are they capable of doing? Well, one of the things that they do, and are sent to this earth, many of them, is to guard and protect us, protect God's people, oversee children. Look at, babies and children, there's angels right there, brethren, with them, because they are so innocent and so precious. Our Father in heaven is going to watch over them, and he has his angel beings to do his bidding on that. Let's look at Psalm 91 on that issue. Psalm 91. If you will. Psalm number 91. I'm going to read to you verse 11 and 12. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. What it's saying here, brethren, they will protect us and show us and be there for us, basically. And believe me, they've done it for me, and I know they've done it for all of you at various times. May not be aware of it at the time, because when I look back, I see instances in my life where an angel being had to be there to show me, direct me, or do something in either my mind or did something outside in front of me. Maybe it could have been driving a car. It could have been on my motorcycle, because sometimes you need help there too, driving motorcycles around. The angelic protection is there, and especially for babies and children, and for women and elderly people too. They're there. Now, the second item here is they act as our eternal Creator God's messengers. That's really important too. They execute His will. They follow right through. If He orders them to go to some certain place and to stop this problem or correct that problem, they will do it. And I can tell you right now that these angelic beings, brethren, are equipped with powers that are beyond our comprehension than they are. We don't know exactly how far-reaching their power is. I think probably we'll find out in the coming Kingdom Age rule, because they're going to be around all over the place on this earth, because they're going to help us with God's chosen people who are resurrected and those who didn't taste that but were changed. And they're going to be around, many of them, and we'll know who they are at that time. So they will, as His messengers, execute His will with their powers that are beyond our human comprehension. Okay, here's a couple of instances, brethren, in the Scriptures where angel beings were sent to destroy. Now, if you go to Genesis 19, I won't go through all of that, but of Sodom and Gomorrah, everyone in here is familiar with what happened to them. Our Father in heaven sent two angels there, and they checked things out in Sodom and Gomorrah, and they found out that, yes, the cry is going to our Creator in heaven about how terrible these people were and what they were doing. So our Father in heaven sent two angelic beings, and they met up with with two people. And, of course, this gentleman was camped out not far from Sodom and Gomorrah. And these angel beings told this man that they're going to destroy the city. And Lot was in that city. And the angel beings went in, and they told Lot to get out with his wife. They're going to just utterly destroy those two twin city states. And because they were so horrific, their immorality and their perversion was so great, our Father in heaven had to do away with them, because they were spreading disease all over and things were happening. They were murderous people too. So that was Lot and his wife, and their family got out. Now, another thing is, our Father in heaven uses angelic beings to correct people, nations, and He corrected Israel on a number of occasions. Let's look at 2 Samuel here, if you will. 2 Samuel 24, verse 16. Second Samuel 24, verse 16. When the angel stretched out his hand to destroy Jerusalem, the eternal God was grieved because of the calamity and said to the angel who was afflicting the people, "Enough, withdraw your hand." So the angel of the eternal was then at the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. When David saw the angel who was striking down the people, he said to our Father in heaven, "I am the one who has sinned and done wrong. These are but sheep. What have they done? Let your hand fall upon me and my family. So, King David, he saw the angel. He knows what he looked like. And he was there to really chastise the people of Jerusalem. It must have been a really good reason for that, too. Also, these angelic beings, brethren, they come upon this earth to counteract the forces of evil from time to time at our Father in heaven's discretion. Let's look at Daniel chapter 9, the book of Daniel. If you'll turn there just for a moment, Daniel chapter 9. And I'm going to read to you verse 11 and 12. Well, excuse me, no, that was verse 20 to 22, chapter 9. While I was speaking and praying, confessing for my sin and the sin of my people, Israel, and making my request to the eternal God, my God, for his holy hill, while I was still in prayer, Gabriel, the man I had seen in the earlier vision, came to me in swift flight about the time of the evening sacrifice. He instructed me and said to me, Daniel, I have now come to give you insight and understanding. That was the angel Gabriel. Very powerful being, brethren, and he appeared as a man to him, to Daniel, and gave him instructions. The other thing is about angel beings, brethren, they have what I would call an active involvement in the events on this earth. Active involvement. They don't sit on the side and do nothing. They're there. And various times and events require them to be here. Let's look at Revelation 15. Let's go to Revelation again. There's a lot in Revelation about angel beings. Let's look at Revelation in chapter 15. I'm going to read verse 1. I saw in heaven another great and marvelous sign, 7 angels with the 7 last plagues, because with them God's wrath is completed. There's 7 angels again, brethren, doing our Father in heaven's bidding and following his instructions upon the people of this earth. Now, it's interesting to note that these heavenly beings, angel beings, have continual access to our Father in heaven. There's no stopping them going back and forth to heaven. And I have to say this, and I've thought about this for a long time, the distance between these angelic beings in heaven means nothing. Distance doesn't mean anything to them because they can be there in a flash. They can come here in a flash within a twinkling of an eye, so to speak. So distance doesn't mean anything for angel beings that travel in this universe. They can move through air. They can navigate through space at any speed, and they can go through locked doors, they can go through walls, and they can at times, and they do become invisible. They have that capacity and power. I'd like you to turn to Matthew 18. There's a good example of that in Matthew 18. If you'll turn there for a moment. Matthew 18. I want to read to you something about an incident that happened to Peter. So here we go. Matthew 18. Well, first of all, brethren, I want to read verse 10. This reverts back to the accessibility of these angels to our Father in heaven and on this earth. He tells us here, see that you do not look down on one of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven. Always. There you go for accessibility again. Turn over to Acts 12. Acts chapter 12, if you will. This is an interesting thing, an event that did happen in the earlier times in the New Testament. Acts 12. I'm going to read to you verses 6 to 10. The night before Herod was to bring him to trial, that is Peter, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers bound with two chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. Suddenly an angel of the eternal God appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. "Quick, get up," he said, and the chains fell off Peter's wrists. Isn't that something? Imagine being bound in chains, and then they just fall off. So you see what kind of power these angelic beings had at the command of our Creator. Then the angel said to him, "Put on your clothes and sandals." Now, Peter must have been in his birthday suit, if I could put it that way. But I don't know why they would take their clothes off in the cell. Maybe it was hot. I don't know. It was hot in there or something. But he had no clothes on. So the angel says, "Put on your clothes and sandals." And Peter did so. He wrapped his cloak around you and follow me. And he did. The angel told him. Peter followed him out of the prison, but he had no idea that what the angel was doing was really happening. He thought he was seeing a vision. They passed through the first and second guards, came to the iron gate leading to the city of Jerusalem, that is. It opened for them by itself. I wonder, how did they do that? There's power, brethren. There's power over the material universe and material things. Iron, steel, and who knows what means nothing to these angelic beings. They understand its structure, they know what it is, and they can deal with it very quickly. So anyway, as it says here, going on verse 10, they passed the first and second guards, came to the iron gate, and so on. The gate opened, they went through it, and when they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left him. He was gone. He disappeared. So you know the story after that. Peter went to this house, knocked on the door, and they couldn't believe it was Peter. I thought, who is this guy? And all of a sudden, this one person looked and said, "Yeah, that's Peter. Let him in. Let him in." You know, they thought he was all bound up, which he was. But again, our Father in heaven used angels for His purpose to free these men and let him go. So that's a wonderful thing, that the power that these angels have at the command of our Creator. We have to understand, brethren, in knowing about angelic beings, when we read about them in the Bible and think about them, they play a vital role on this earth with God's guidance and everything and His instructions to intervene in the affairs of men on this earth. Now, we have to understand our Father in heaven does not enforce, at this time at least, His sovereign will on mankind. He hasn't done it yet, but it's going to come in the future. He's going to enforce His will on mankind to live right and to do what's right in government, in families, everywhere. And they're going to have to obey Him. It's going to happen. He influences events on this earth to His own purpose. He has a purpose in governments, and He will intervene at His will to arrange things, circumstances differently, to achieve His purpose. And He will use angels a lot of times to accomplish these things. Now, in closing, I just want to say that these angel beings, brethren, they exist. Even though we can't see them, they're around, and they preserve our lives. They protect us, our children, wherever we are, and they're here to serve us and help us, God's people. And it will be a continual thing. And believe me, when our Messiah returns to this earth, there's going to be, and the scriptures bear testimony to it, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of these angel beings coming back with Him to establish His rulership and His kingdom on this earth. And we will get a chance to see them, I'm sure. I'm sure we will. And it'll be a wonderful thing to see them and their power, and all based on love for humanity. That's what our Father wants to do and show us. So with that coming in the future, the Feast of Trumpets is the beginning future event that's going to happen. And when those trumpets are blown and sounded off, people on this earth, they're going to sit up and take notice. They won't have a choice. They will not have a choice. But it'll be a wonderful time in the future for when these angel beings show up with our Messiah and they blow their trumpets. And here we go for a whole nother age, a kingdom age rule, 1,000 years of peace. And I think about that quite often, that 1,000 years of peace, that millennium as it's called. So it's a wonderful thing to know. These angel beings are going to be there to help us.